My mother-in-law convinced my husband to cut off my finances, underestimating my resourcefulness. Grace, at 29, found herself freshly divorced from her husband, Liam. Their love story began in college, where they shared classes and quickly fell for each other's charms. Despite their strong bond, a persistent thorn existed in their relationship. Liam's mother, Scarlett, she seemed to harbor an inexplicable animosity towards Grace, constantly meddling in their relationship. Despite voicing her concerns to Liam, he struggled to confront his mother. Torn between loyalty to her and his love for Grace, he couldn't bring himself to stand up to her. Grace resigned herself to enduring Scarlett's unwarranted criticisms, believing Liam was inadvertently fueling her animosity. Their relationship weathered many storms, with frequent arguments over Scarlett's influence. Eventually, Liam saw reason and ceased divulging details about their lives to his mother. After 3 years of dating, they tied the knot, much to Scarlett's chagrin. Her attempts to sabotage their marriage proved futile, and Grace and Liam distanced themselves from her toxic presence for a while. During this period, both Liam and Grace found success in their careers. While Grace admired Liam's achievements, she felt a need to maintain a sense of balance. They split their expenses unevenly, with Grace covering the lion's share. Despite their marital happiness, a void lingered within Grace. She felt a need to pursue something of her own. Drawing upon her innate talent for design, Grace delved into graphic design as a side venture. Keen to keep it under wraps, she embarked on courses and invested in equipment without Liam's knowledge. Her best friend, Owen, was the sole confidant of her new endeavor, offering encouragement and practical advice. As Grace's skills flourished, Owen introduced her to acquaintances eager to engage her services. Despite her novice status, they admired her work and entrusted her with projects, gradually expanding her client base. This newfound source of income alleviated financial pressures and allowed Liam and Grace to enjoy a more comfortable lifestyle. With each paycheck, Grace squirreled away savings, dreaming of treating Liam to something special as a token of gratitude for standing by her through thick and thin. She hadn't broached the topic with him yet, and every time she considered it, it seemed like he was avoiding any serious conversation. It became evident to her that something was amiss, but he remained tight-lipped about it. The first inkling of trouble came when Liam confessed to Grace that he had exhausted his entire paycheck on investments just a week after receiving it. They'd had a heated disagreement about it, but managed to patch things up for the time being. To make ends meet, Grace put in extra hours at work, which helped alleviate some of the strain. The following month, Liam repeated the same pattern, leaving Grace feeling exasperated. She couldn't fathom how he could squander his earnings so recklessly. In her frustration, she lashed out with hurtful words, though she later regretted her outburst. However, when the same scenario repeated itself for the third consecutive month, Grace reached her breaking point. She had become more cautious with her finances, working tirelessly not just at her day job, but also with her burgeoning graphic design side business, which was increasingly becoming their primary source of income. When Liam once again found himself strapped for cash, Grace was fed up. "How could you let this happen again? Have you learned nothing?" she admonished him. Despite his attempts to justify his actions, Grace refused to shoulder the burden of his financial irresponsibility any longer. It was a tough decision, but she made it clear that she would not be bailing him out this time. Liam's reaction was one of indignation and defensiveness, but Grace stood her ground. "You can't gamble away your entire paycheck and expect me to cover for you," she asserted firmly. "I won't enable this behavior any longer." Their argument escalated, with accusations hurled back and forth. In the end, Liam stormed off, leaving Grace to grapple with the turmoil of their crumbling relationship. In the aftermath of their confrontation, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Liam's behavior than met the eye. Suspicions began to creep in, and she couldn't help but wonder if Scarlett, his overbearing mother, was somehow involved. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Grace decided to do a bit of snooping while Liam was out. It didn't take long for her to uncover the truth. Liam had been deceiving her. With access to his bank account, which he had unwittingly left logged in on her laptop, Grace discovered that he had more than enough funds squirreled away, contrary to his claims. As she scrutinized Liam's transactions, Grace couldn't find anything out of the ordinary, apart from the usual debits. Perplexed, she wondered why he had been hiding his finances from her and weaving lies. Seeking clarity, she delved into his messages. The first person she noticed him texting was his mother. Their conversation revolved around their recent altercation, with Liam painting Grace as the antagonist, claiming she had berated him for withholding money. Scarlett, his mother, seemed to revel in this discord, affirming her suspicions about Grace. As Grace scrolled further, she unearthed a disturbing revelation. Scarlett had been relentlessly disparaging Grace to Liam, labeling her as materialistic and insinuating that she was with him solely for financial gain. Ironically, Grace was the primary breadwinner in the household. Their exchanges showed how Scarlett's toxic influence had fueled Liam's grievances against Grace, magnifying minor annoyances and nurturing his resentment. The final blow came when Grace discovered their scheme to cut her off financially. Initially hesitant, Liam succumbed to Scarlett's manipulations, gradually acquiescing to her demands. He fed her ammunition by disclosing incidents where Grace expressed frustration, further stoking her animosity towards her. It was a devastating betrayal, leaving Grace reeling with hurt and confusion, uncertain of her next steps. She sought solace in her best friend, Owen, nestled in her company. Grace shared the distressing truth she had uncovered, seeking her guidance in this tumultuous moment. Owen, ever the steadfast confidant, listened intently, offering her unwavering support as Grace grappled with the betrayal inflicted by those closest to her. Grace wrestled with the weight of the situation, unsure of the best course of action. It seemed glaringly obvious. Cut off Liam's support, wait for him to hit rock bottom, then file for divorce. But Grace questioned the morality of such a plan, deeming it as cruel. Owen's concern nudged Grace to reconsider her approach, prompting her suggestion to sleep on it and revisit the issue the next day. Exhausted both physically and emotionally, Grace welcomed the rest that sleep promised. The following morning, with the luxury of a weekend ahead, Owen and Grace sought solace in the familiarity of a favorite movie, drifting off to sleep in each other's company. The tranquility of the day brought a sense of peace, a temporary reprieve from the turmoil brewing within. They indulged in simple pleasures, immersing themselves in movies, culinary delights, and each other's company. Despite the nagging thoughts of the previous day's revelations, Grace made a conscious effort to set them aside, prioritizing the much-needed respite. However, their reprieve was short-lived. Scarlett's call shattered the tranquility. Reluctantly, Grace answered, greeted by accusations and hostility. Scarlett's unwarranted accusations only served to exacerbate the tension, but Owen's encouragement urged Grace to maintain composure. Amidst Scarlett's tirade, an unexpected proposal emerged. A 50-50 split of everything between Liam and Grace. It was a proposition tinged with skepticism, a test of Grace's commitment to the marriage. Despite the audacity of her demand, Grace agreed, willing to entertain any possibility of salvaging what remained of their relationship. With tentative acceptance, plans were set in motion, culminating in a meeting scheduled for Tuesday to formalize the arrangement. Though uncertainty lingered, Grace resolved to confront the challenge head-on, armed with newfound determination to navigate the tumultuous waters ahead. Grace was stunned by the turn her marriage had taken. Torn between disbelief and seething anger, she couldn't comprehend how Scarlett could brand her a gold digger, and how Liam could stand by and allow such an accusation. She had stood by him through thick and thin, supporting his endeavors even when they led to losses. She had covered for him when he lied, shouldered the burden of their shared responsibilities, all while concealing her own side hustle, waiting for the right moment to reveal it to him. Sharing the details with Owen, her smile hinted at the brilliance of Paul's scheme. Splitting everything evenly would leave Liam with little to fall back on, given his lack of awareness about Grace's additional income. She had hoped to surprise him with a lavish gift once her side venture gained traction, but now she was grateful to have it as a safety net. Tuesday arrived swiftly, and Owen accompanied Grace as support. Arriving home, they found Scarlett, Liam, and a lawyer already there, finalizing the contract. Ignoring Liam's silent plea for privacy, Grace approached Scarlett, demanding to review the terms. As expected, the agreement mandated equal division of assets, with a clause prohibiting financial assistance between them. Reluctantly, Grace signed, knowing it would leave Liam scrambling financially. Predictably, problems ensued. Initially, they exchanged only terse words, their rift too deep to bridge. Yet, living under the same roof necessitated some communication. Liam attempted to breach the divide, but Grace remained aloof, resentful of his complacency. Eventually, tired of his persistent attempts, she relented. "Will you please just talk to me? We can't keep going on like this," Liam pleaded. His admission of missing their connection stunned Grace, juxtaposed against his willingness to sign away their financial unity. "What do you want me to say, Liam?" Grace retorted, her frustration palpable. "Is that why you agreed to sever our finances completely?" Liam's silence spoke volumes, laying bare the chasm between them as they stood at the precipice of their shattered marriage. "I just need to know where your loyalty lies, Grace," Liam implored. "Despite all the issues caused by your mother, you still choose to side with her. Is this truly what you believe is best for us?" "Please, Liam, don't speak ill of my mother like that," Grace countered. "And what wealth do you possess that you're so concerned about? I don't understand." "I'm simply trying to make things right between us. Can we not lash out at each other?" Liam pleaded. "There will be no reconciliation until that contract is null and void," Grace stated firmly. "It's only been 2 weeks since we signed it, and I've seen no evidence to suggest you're not here for the money," Liam replied defensively. "If you're struggling financially, just let me know. I'm willing to help." "Wouldn't that be a breach of the contract?" "I won't risk violating it," Grace insisted. "Why are you making this so difficult? Can't we just be civil?" Liam asked, his voice laced with frustration. Grace could see Liam grappling with conflicting influences, his mother's and his own. The lion she married wouldn't have succumbed to such manipulation. That month, Grace diligently paid off their major debts, leaving Liam in debt with his share settled. She had more disposable income. Owen and Grace indulged in lavish outings, while Liam always had an excuse for his financial constraints. Grace's graphic design side gig thrived, leading her to consider quitting her day job. Meanwhile, Liam struggled, his portion of the pantry often bare. While a part of Grace empathized, she reminded herself that he brought this upon himself. Scarlett's unexpected visit left Grace uneasy. Accusing Grace of stealing from Liam, she threatened to involve the police. Confused and defensive, Grace demanded an explanation. "You're accusing me of seeking revenge on Liam because I don't like the contract he made us sign. Please, your son has been struggling all month, but it's not because I've stolen his money to fund my outings to fancy places. He has no money to steal, and you know it," Grace retorted. "And let's not forget who actually coerced us into signing that contract in the first place. You forced it upon us, and now your son is paying the price." "Liar. I'm calling the police right now," Scarlett shrieked. "Go ahead," Grace challenged. "I haven't taken a single cent from your son." "Then how do you have so much money?" "Your job doesn't pay that much more than Liam's, and he's told me you've cut back your hours." "I have another business on the side, a graphic design venture that I plan to surprise Liam with," Grace explained. "But thanks to your meddling, that plan went down the drain. I was even going to use the money to buy you a car." "How much do you make from it?" Scarlett pressed. "More than you think," Grace replied, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "You see, I didn't lie. I was trying to do something good, and then you ruined it. If you care so much about your son, maybe you should be the one supporting him." With that, Grace handed the divorce papers to Liam. "I have filed for divorce right after we signed the contract. I've been holding onto them until the right moment." Liam's shock was palpable, But Grace felt no sympathy. Scarlett's satisfaction should have been evident, considering it was what she had been pushing for. Instead, she looked furious now that she understood the consequences for Liam. Grace informed them she would be moving out in 3 weeks, agreeing only to continue splitting the remaining loan payments. Liam tried to plead with Grace, but she remained resolute, reminding him that this was the consequence of his actions. In the following months, Grace found liberation from the toxic relationship. Scarlett contested the divorce, but with their assets legally separated, there was little for Liam to gain. In fact, he ended up losing more. Unable to keep up with the mortgage expenses on the house they sold, he moved back in with his mother. Meanwhile, Grace's business flourished, and she gained lucrative opportunities with big brands. It was a blissful and rewarding period for her. Grace was grateful she had something to fall back on, sparing her from the fate Liam endured. Perhaps this would serve as a lesson for him in the future, but that was not her concern anymore. She had found her strength, her independence, and her own path, leaving the past behind.